Wait, why can't I see the attendees? Oh, there we go.
At least one person is attending. That's good.
Yes.
We've drawn an audience.
Can we
The
see?
line
Oh,
has
we
been-
can see the number.
crossed.
Oh, that's going to be brutal later. The solo one.
Yeah, don't compare anything. Just run away. Just hide. Don't look at anything. Run away.
Meredith, you're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
Mhm. All righty. So, hello and welcome to the Child of Rexypanel. I'm Roberto. I'm the host of Czar Power, and we can all introduce ourselves and our respective podcasts. I think that'd be highly cool. So let's start off with Meredith.
Hey everyone, I'm Meredith Vaughn. I'm one of the hosts of the Alexander Standard.
Eric.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Eric. I am a co-host of Ranking 76, The American West, where we review and rank the heroes and villains of the American West.
Ben.
I'm Ben Clark. I am the co-host slash person in charge, for some reason, at Battle Royale French Monarchs. We rank all of the kings and emperors of France from Clovis to Napoleon III.
And I'm Umberto Molinatti, and I'm one of the hosts of So You Think You Can Rule Persia, where we rate and review all the kings of Persia from Diocles to Yazdegerd III.
Awesome. And of course, Umberto's my Berto twin, so I like that.
Yay, Berto squad.
Yeah. So this is a panel that we're gonna ask questions to each other, but audience, you are the one who has full front. This is a 40-minute question answer session about anything on our podcast, but you can do it based on everyone or just a single person in general. Just ask us anything. But I think I will open up the first question to everyone. And the first question is, how did you meet your co-host?
I'll go first because it's very simple. Me and Eliza, we were born and raised in the same city, went to the same year at school, had all of loads of mutual friends. We never actually met until the first day of university in a Greek myth course, which says everything you need to know about both of us. We're just history nerds. We became a bit obsessed with each other, and that's about it. And now we don't live in Australia anymore. I live in Scotland. She lives in Japan. So the podcast is a good way for us to sort of keep in touch and everything.
Australia wasn't big enough for the both of you, so you had to
It was no.
Continent-sized country.
Yeah, it's big enough. Well, I guess I'll go. So yeah, just met Serial in a different country from everyone's home, which was interesting. But yeah, basically had a friend doing a semester abroad in Germany where Serial was staying, and we were just introduced at a random party together, and we just clicked and stayed in touch. And then I proposed, hey, do you want to do a podcast? They were like, sounds weird, but okay. And then we just ended up doing it. And now that I've moved countries, at least we can still keep in touch. And yeah, it's nice to have a weekly chance where you can have a chat and catch up and talk crap about kings.
Heck yeah.
I can go next. So I met Matt in college, but we also kind of worked together as student workers for campus dining, and wasn't particularly close to him because we're very kind of opposites. I'm more reserved and more conversational, where Matt is a cartoon character if you put him out in this environment. So I just was random. I listened to Totalis rank him and Rex Factor, and I was trying to think if I did something crazy like this, who would be a good host? And Matt just kept going back into my brain. So yeah, that's how we met. It's nothing too extraordinary.
So Dustin and I met, it was my senior year of college and he was finishing up his master's. So we met in a history class, started dating, 6 years ago today, got married. But I think like many people had that moment during COVID lockdown that you looked at each other and were like, let's do a podcast. But I was the one that was familiar with Rexypod. Like Rex Factor was the very first podcast I had ever found. I don't know how many years ago. And Dustin's like, I don't think a lot of people are doing that style of thing. I'm like, there are a lot of people that are doing that style of thing.
There are multiple generations.
There
now.
are lots of them. Yeah. So that's how we came together.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Happy anniversary, Meredith and Dustin.
Thank you.
Yes, and the way I met Brendan playing Dungeons and Dragons in college, we were part of this Dungeons and Dragons club, and he got assigned to my group, and we've been friends ever since. We kept in touch after I graduated. He was a sophomore, and now he's been helping me with both of my podcasts. And I came up, was like, you want to do a podcast where you get to dunk on Russian rulers? And he's like, yeah, why not? And it's been, and we've been going strong ever since.
Oh, Roberto, I have a question for you. Which do you think is more likely to open a portal to hell, your D&D or your podcast?
Well, I would say my Dungeons and Dragons, probably. If you play a full campaign with me, I am the hellish DM who will destroy you all. But make sure you're overpowered enough so you don't feel like I'm actively out to get you. So I will, level 1, give you a bunch of ability points, feats, and magic items, and then from there on, I'm like, well, I give you enough to start off with, so you're going to be destroyed. So,
as a former player, I can guarantee.
Yes. So then, my next question is, who is the Rexypod that influenced you all? I know the answer might be Totalis Rankium, but
I'll break the seal. It was Totalis Rankium. I remember I first with the American presidents, and it was during COVID, like Meredith was saying, is I wanted to get back into history because it's been a couple of years, and I turned on, like, I just wanted something that they cover all the American presidents in order. Totalis Rankium was it because Jerry Landry and presidencies was on George Washington. So like, great, we can get that done. But they were, I think, through Hayes, I believe. So I started listening to that. I listened to the first episode and hated it. I was like, I don't get it. What's going on here? Why are these two British dudes talking about president? And then like, I'm on a walk later because it's COVID and there's nothing else to do. And I was like, okay, let's give them another chance. And then I fell in love with the charm of the show, the format, all of it. And like, it just clicked for me. And it was off from there. And I listened to them and then Pontifact, Rex Factor, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I find a lot of podcasts are like that. Especially if you start with the first episode. You kind of go in, you're like, who are these strangers? They need to impress me and whatever. I'm an OG Rex Factor baby from way back when. Like, I was listening to Rex Factor in high school because I'm a baby. But 4 podcasts were cool as well. Like anyway, but then I always wanted to do a history podcast is the thing, but I never knew what kind of format it would take. And I thought, well, you can't do Rex Factor because Rex Factor's already doing Rex Factor. Like, you can't just do Rex Factor for something else. And then I discovered Totalis Rankium and Pontifact during the pandemic, because I was just looking for more stuff to listen to because it seemed like I'd listened to everything at that point. Turns out hadn't. It turns out there's lots of podcasts, guys. So I started listening to those, and I was like, this is like a thing that is possible. And I've been emailing Rex Factor for years that they should probably do the French Monarchs. So why can't I just do the French Monarchs?
Yeah, I will. Oh, go ahead, Umberto.
That's mine.
Okay. So I think, my first Rexypod was Pontifact. It was, again, during the pandemic, as with everybody. And just randomly thought, this would be cool. Then I wasn't fully sure about the format to start with. I had to warm up to it. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I get this. I like it. I like how this works. That's fun. And then the ones who pretty much basically inspired the direction we went in is Totalis Rankium, because I thought, wouldn't it be cool to see what the Persians were doing at the same time? Would it be nice to see the flip side of the coin? And yeah, basically, I was wondering if they were going to do it for like a season 3 or something, and then they said, no, we're going to move towards something else probably. And so I thought, that's a shame. That's a shame. I would have liked to listen to that podcast. And I thought, but I could make the podcast. And so I did. And yeah, I managed to get Serial into it too, which was great.
I think for us, so like I was saying, Rex Factor was the first podcast I had ever found or listened to, but Totalis Rankium is the one that like I introduced Dustin to, and we talked to, like, the one we would talk about the most, because his dissertation, his area of study is like Roman Republic and everything like that. But then it was kind of him who like was trying to come up with a time period of history that no one had really covered yet. And we thought this idea where it's not necessarily a linear succession and everything would be a fun one to tackle, and one that someone wouldn't beat us to with the successors.
So for me, my first Rexypod was Pontifex. Mostly because I got invited, because I run another podcast, the history of Sarkardville, Georgia, and I came on to play Among Us with a bunch of people, and Pontifex was there, and I was like, oh, they sound, Breeze seems like really fun, so I went to listen to her podcast, loved it, but I was like, I have another podcast, I'm not gonna start another one yet, and then listen to Battle Royale, and then I was like, I want to do one for the Russians. So Pontifex and Battle Royale were my inspirations. So that was, for me, that was a lot of fun. And I was like, and then after I started listening to Totalis Rankium. And funnily enough, I've listened to most of the Rexypods except for like the OGs. So I haven't listened to like Grim Readings, Saga Thing, or Rex Factor yet. So I am out of the loop on those, because I roll a dice to see what podcast I listen to next. So everyone else has been very lucky. Yeah, so we do have our first question. This is from Christoph Goebel. How important do you think the ranking part is in your shows compared to the general storytelling?
I mean, I think I don't want to say it's the most important, but like at the end, it's where you kind of just summarize like what the important points were, especially like when you're talking with your co-host and they can recall back, like, like these are the points that you really got across. From there, I just think it's just more of like, how am I going to remember this person type thing? So, I mean, to give someone like an 8 or a 10 is arbitrary at best, but it really what you're telling is how likely am I to remember this person going forward type thing. So I think it's the most important part to me. Obviously, the history, we got to get that correct, and we got to have an entertaining story. But that last 20-minute section, for at least for me, is where the reward of all of this research comes down to talking with the co-host.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's really useful to just have it there at the end so you can summarize things. And I realize this when I'm listening often, where like I've missed a bit sometimes in the middle because I zoned out or whatever. Then I realize, oh, right. In the summary, you remember, okay, this is the important part. This is what we need to remember. And then, it's fun to have a ranking, mostly because I feel like it helps putting people into leagues where you can sort of know, okay, this person was absolutely crap when we know it. This person was in the middle and it's comparable to these other people. It's like, okay, yeah, when we do our rankings, I can see that, okay, yeah, the people in the same spot make sense. And then, well, of course, it helps for the end for the final, battle or whatever, to actually, get an idea of where we're starting from, and for people to put bets on them.
I've always found the most compelling part of the podcast we do is that we do everyone from start to finish. We don't skip over people. We don't say, oh, we don't need to worry about them because they were only here for like 2 minutes, that kind of thing. We do everyone. Everyone gets an episode, and everyone's measured by the same yardstick, which obviously creates problems in terms of like, how do you compare someone from the 800s versus someone from the 1800s? Like, it's completely different. But it's also good for like thoroughness. And I end up going down like rabbit holes and like presenting things to people that like maybe have never ever been talked about in the English speaking world, or like you find some interesting discoveries when you encounter a ruler who has 2 lines in Wikipedia, and you're like, okay, well, we have to fill the rest of this time by going into something else. Let's see, what was his like we had a king who became king when he was like the instant he was born. He was the king because his dad had died before he was born, and then he died 5 days later. So what do you do with that episode? So I ended up looking around and like going into, okay, well, what was the council doing? How were they handling this? What was his mother doing? What did she go to do after that? How did she deal with this? Like, and that opened up a whole new area of history that was really interesting. Sorry, no, just to finish my point. I think giving yourself that a kind of criteria, and this is also, I think, ties back into like having the categories and why they're important. It gives you a criteria to start with as a jumping off point that is sort of a good, consistent structure to have, if that makes sense. Anyway, sorry, Meredith.
I'm going to go a little against the grain. I think at least for right now, while we're still dealing with the Diadokoi, I think the storytelling is more important because for so many of them, it ends in disaster and defeat that I think you need that story of like, but how did we get here to kind of give them any sort of fair ranking? Because if you did just take it by those bullet points, you know, a lot of them ended very quickly. So I think it's important that we learn like how they rose the ranks with Alexander and what they were doing before and everything they fought to get to that point. So at least for right now, I think the storytelling's more important.
Yeah, and for us, I think it's a nice mixture of both because we get that summary effect, but we all know the most important thing is, do they get to the final round or not? So the points are arbitrary. But for us, you know, we had a lot. Right now, numbers statistics-wise, we're half and half with Kremlin and Gulag. But we also try to see, you know, how scrappy were they? You know, did they actually try to do something, or were they just like a complete loser who didn't do anything? And that's kind of for us, having that background story helps. And even if we have the bullet points at the end where we're like, well, they have low points, but they tried doing something, they just failed spectacularly. And so that's kind of how we commit to it.
You guys are half and half.
Yeah, we're only at 15 people though.
1 in 10 of our people escapes the
okay,
game.
So like
1 in 10. Like 1 in 4.
So here's the thing: we have a lot of like big people up front. It's about to get bad. It's about to get very bad. The Mongols are coming. That's all I'm going to say.
They're all bad.
I mean, Olga. After my heart. But that leads us to our next question. Do you already know who's going to win the ranking, or is it going to be a surprise?
do you mean like of the whole series, or do we go into the episodes knowing like that they'll probably get it or not?
I think it's just to go with the whole series. I mean, I kind of have an idea, but it's going to be between like...
series, so.
Yeah, Luke said a whole series, so I'm going to go say it's going to be between 5 people, maybe 6. You know, Brendan's going to carry Olga of Kiev through the whole way on a golden standard. On a boat. On a boat, yeah. and I'm going to carry Peter the Great in the whole way. He's literally the logo of the show. So, but we have, you know, we still have, I think, Stalin would be a big one who's going to go through. Catherine the Great. I'd say Alexander the First would be a big one, and 6th person would probably end up being Alexander Nevsky or Ivan the Terrible. So basically, we have 6 people. We don't know who's going to win. It just depends on how they match up against each other. But I'm guessing Peter or Ivan or Olga as top 3. All right. Anyone else?
I don't think we really have an idea. Dustin definitely has his like favorites just from studying history, but I don't think he's ever sat down to actually say, okay, but how do they actually compare to each other and who would knock each other out? Like, you know, for example, I mean, like, as much as I hate to say it, you know, Eurydice has the Alexander standard. She's not going to win. And then other than her right now, we've got Antigonus the One-Eyed and Eumenes, who are both pretty spectacular, but we've got many more people to come. So
So I
Yeah,
guess
I think
for us, ours is a little bit different because we don't have a linear succession essentially, and we have the most narrow scope. It's a land area rather than a line of rulers. It's basically a bunch of riffraff that went out west in the American frontier, and then how well did they do? So I kind of get some freedom of kind of making the list as we go. And I can tell you my list at one point was 120 people long, and trying to narrow that down to 76 can be a bit tedious. So I couldn't tell you. And also, you just learn just throughout research, you learn of
Mhm.
another person that deserves an episode or something like that. And so no, I don't really know. I can tell you that like Meriwether Lewis will do very well, and I can tell you like a Kit Carson will do well. But I honestly we don't know who it's going to be until the end because Matt is also a wild card because he
Oh
just
yeah.
individual little pieces. So I think that's just the fun.
Yeah, I think also on our side, there's probably like 5 or 6 which are probably going to be there at the end. Like Darius the Great is just massive and just there on a pedestal forever and ever. And but then you have the opposite, which is like Cyrus, which is the good version of Darius, where it's like, is he better? Is he not? How does that work? And then you have all the, you have Antiochus the Great, you have the Sassanids, you have the Shapurs, the Shapurs, the Khosrows, and then you have the Mithridates in the Parthian times. There's like a lot of people you can look at, and I wouldn't be comfortable saying right now who's going to win. I feel like those are the top contenders, but who's going to be at the top is going to be a lot depending on how I'm feeling the day, what Serial's takeaways are.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Who's mine? I have one that I think is like going to be like a dark horse that like you might not see coming and like stands like a very good chance of winning. And then there's also Louis XIV and Napoleon are there as well. So so it is very, for me it's between 3 that I haven't done yet, at least. Of the ones that we have done, if we were to do the tournament now, I think Charlemagne would win. Like no one pretty much surpasses Charlemagne, at least not score-wise, for ages. There's arguments to be made about Philip Augustus and Philip IV as well, who both got roughly equal scores to Charlemagne. But he's like, it's so hard to top Charlemagne because he's so iconic. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting seeing how the competition goes, because Charlemagne is like, while he's like the greatest or whatever, I don't think he's the most interesting. And I think that's what our competition is going to hinge on. And that's always kind of been what it hinges on. We only have we have 2 categories out of our 5 categories that are about how actually successful were they as a ruler. So yeah. The others are purely interest and like arbitrary records they broke and stuff like that.
Okay. Bree asks, what unique part of your show are you most proud of?
I like our commercials.
I love the commercials.
They're good.
I like our, sorry, I interrupted. I like the guillotine. And I like what we've done with the whole tournament, sort of imagining what it's going to be like. Because not only do we have the imaginary tournament that's going to happen between all of the kings that don't get guillotined and aren't in like a bloody heap off to the side, but we also take the opportunity to do like regents and like important side people, and we kind of sort them in their own way into different seating in the tournament. And not only that, but on our Patreon we've started giving the people, because the people we do on Patreon are automatically like amazing, so we've started giving them roles in the imaginary tournament as like staff. For example, I think Robert Giscard handles the betting, and Margaret the Black of Flanders, her job is to keep the English out. So it's like, yeah, we're slowly building this like fun little imaginary tournament universe that I think is going to make our end episodes really special.
Yeah, I think on our side, thanks. I think on our side, my favorite part is like the serial drawings.
Yes.
Because they're cool.
Yes.
And I love it also because there's some like obscenely obscure kings that don't even have coins or anything. And this is the only depiction of them that exists. Like a listener sent us a Google search they'd done where basically the second Google image search was Serial's drawing. It was great. I love that so much. And so yeah, it's just fun that you can see this whole group of people and be like, okay, now they have faces when before they had nothing, and they were forgotten by everybody, and they were a sentence on Wikipedia. But now look at them; they're there.
That's awesome. Like that's very cool. I guess I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna say two. One, every one of our people can go positive or negative. So if they really are a bad baddie, we can judge them as much. Or if they're really good, which in the American West, there's very few very good, but it's possible. But I think probably my favorite we're gonna do right at the end. We don't have like a Gene Caesar. We don't have a guillotine. We have teams. So at the end of our episodes, we will select if we'll flip a coin, and then if I like this person, I will draft them into my team, or Matt can take them, and then we'll eventually have a list of free agents that we can kind of draw from and drop after we get 20 people each on our teams. And then at the end, we're just going to pick up our matchups on who we think is going to win, and then there's going to be an element of strategy for that. And I think it's going to be really fun.
We don't really have anything special.
Yeah,
I guess
what?
The poems, the
we
Russian.
stopped the poems a while ago. Halfway through, we're like, done with the poems. They just got too long, and I had to find some and then get Brendan. Brendan hates poetry, so but for me, I think I like the use of classical music in our podcast is really fun, because once you start hearing the 1812 overture, you got to turn that volume down. I like the cannons, and it's my favorite musical instrument. Having Tchaikovsky and then hearing Tchaikovsky in Ben's thing, it also makes me really happy. I'm like, yes, Russian influence. No, we're
Tchaikovsky plagiarizing traditional French songs all over the place. It's what the Russians do.
Just copy the French and make it our own. It's like ballet. We made it
copy
better.
The French, make it our own. Yeah, they do that.
Yeah. Alrighty. Next question. This is from Noga. When you do ranking from X to Y, is it kind of committing? It is kind of committing to a lot of episodes. Didn't that scare you to commit so much work when you started?
I'm not the one researching, so I'm just along for the ride. But we did think it's either going to be a way to ensure our marriage lasts for many, many years, or it'll be that awkward thing where we divorce along the way but keep going for the sake of the show.
I think I was very concerned that it was going to stop at some point. So like I started my research a year before actually releasing the first episode, so I have like a nice chunky buffer of like 30 episodes I've been carrying along. And then also we're kind of copping out because we're not going to 1979, we're just stopping at 651, and then maybe if we feel like it, we'll do the remaining stretch. But we have the nice Rise of Islam to just block us off and avoid us from having to do 200 off the bat. We're just doing 90 something. That's fine, that works.
I'll say because again, I just picked a list, and then I picked basically an arbitrary number and what's more American than 1776. So we did the 76. I kind of just looked at Rex Factor's number, like how many, like what is a good length. So yes, I kind of put that on myself, but it is kind of intimidating knowing that we're at 30 something and like I have half to go. And like you don't realize how much life can really get in the way, and like planned hiatuses and all of that. But I do think like what is motivating is because there are so many Rexypods right now. Like we don't want to be the one to stop. So like I feel like there's probably a little bit of a not a competition, but like we're not going to be the first ones to stop in the middle of it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's very motivating. But along with that competition, I guess, also comes the fact that you also have a community of people who know exactly what you're going through at every stage, who either have done exactly what you're doing or are about to do exactly what you're doing. And that's been really good. And that's part of why I started the podcast, because I was like, oh, there's already like at least 3 other people who are doing the same thing. So how hard could it be? And also they have an audience as well that would like to also listen to this. So yeah, that for me is more of an upside than anything else.
And for me, I don't find it daunting because there's a lot of people who we're covering that people just don't know about, and especially when you can find those cool tidbits. Where for me, Oleg of Chernigov was probably the most fun episode I've had, because this guy just wouldn't back down, and then he finally got beaten by a much younger person, and he was like, well, I'll retire. But his thing was, I'm just gonna say no to people. So I have expanded the episode length, because it was originally 96 people and now it's at over 100 something, because I added the regents as actual contenders for the Kremlin, because they ruled. It's Russia. And then I'm also going to be adding the Russian Civil War generals and leaders. So we're never going to escape the 20th century. Oh God. I will say this: I hate everything past 1917. So this gonna be a fun time.
Oh, I hate everything past 1830. So I'm doing the right podcast.
Yeah.
Because the monarchy started to fizzle out by then.
Yep. Then we have the next question from Sarah Golby. If you were forced to swap co-host with another Rexypod for one episode, who would you most like to tell a story to?
Oh,
I'm going for Ali of Rex Factor. That would be so amazing. I would love that. Just there's some great reactions there, and the bewilderment that goes on is pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go one that's made. I don't. They're not on this panel, but Noblesse Oblige. I know I say their name wrong every time. I think Maggie does a really good job of like enhancing the episodes, and she says a lot of like really funny things that catches me off guard. So I would, I'd probably go for Maggie.
I think I'd pick Fry. From Pontifex. I just love her. I love her deadpan reactions to the most crazy things. But like whenever Fry, something crazy will happen, and Fry is just like, "Oh, that's normal." I'm like, I love it. Yeah.
I think we'd want to have some type of a mashup between us and Roberto, just because like the 3 of us have gotten to hang out so much in person, and Roberto and Dustin have very much the same like sense of humor and everything. I think I'd like to see Roberto and Dustin paired together and just the madness the madness unleashed.
I was gonna say me and Dustin, actually.
Yeah
Because like I live a few hours away from Dustin and Meredith, so I go down a lot just to hang out. And Dustin and I were just like, we have crazy like energy, so it is. Once someone starts, it doesn't end until Meredith says it's time for bed. So
I know. Well, and it's usually me being like, I'm gonna go to bed, so like you guys do what you need to do, but they're looking at like all the bookcases and the apartments, like what's this book, what's that book, like, you know.
Yeah.
Not to cheat and give 2 answers again, but we did a little trivia show about a year ago, and Eliza was like the life of the party there. She does so many like wild antics that you're not expecting. That was well, I think he would be my second, just for the chaos alone. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was hard for me to answer that question because I'm like, Eliza's already perfect. I don't want to get rid of Eliza.
And I already have really good chemistry with Brendan. So I'm just like, yeah, we've known each other for so long. He kind of knows how to match my energy, or at least deal with it. Because it's like, yeah, you know, deadpan. Like, that's how you deal with me. It's just deadpan it. And I'm like, well, okay, I need to lower that energy so I can get back on your level. It's great.
You two have very odd couple vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Bree said in the chat, Fry has cat energy. I think Roberto has like dog energy up
Golden
here.
golden
and
retriever.
puppy energy.
Yeah.
cat energy down here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. Then Rick asked if there are any surprises when you do research. Oh, so many.
Oh yeah.
I know at
Oh,
least for
yeah.
for Dustin, he'll be like, oh, it's going to be a pretty short episode. We don't know much about this person. Like, we'll record in an hour, and then like 5 hours later, I'm like, what happened? He's like, I found an article, and it fills in everything. So like that, especially like he was like, Polyparacon's going to be so short. I have next to nothing, and then he found like this one article that gave him most of his source material. So I think for him, it's every time he goes like, this will be short, he's surprised by how much he can actually kind of pull together on someone.
I'd say surprises for me is just how much I don't know. Like, even for how scoped in we are, for a narrow scope. I mean, I'm finding books like, oh, I know nothing about this person. Let me go read this entire book on like Cattle Kingdom in Colorado. I have a book I'm reading right now. I never would have thought I'd be researching that. And when I started this, like, so I think that's just, I mean, you feel a sense of, like, I know nothing, but also you want to gain that information too.
Yeah, I will say I did not expect me to be able to read Church Slavonic by the end of this podcast, but here we are reading Church Slavonic. It's not fun. It's very difficult. But when you need to get the right word for research, it's just like, it's surprising how much a translation changes everything, especially when you're translating on your own. It's like, oh, this translator used this word, we could have used that word, and that's where the change comes in. I'm like, got it.
Yeah, my middle French is now as good as my modern French, which is not saying either of them are good at all. I'm not fluent in either of them, but it's weird that I'm the same level in both, I think.
I've actually managed to recover my Greek and Latin from my high school days. It's like, oh, now I use them constantly. And yeah, generally surprises are when the Romans aren't around, you generally find out that really interesting things were happening in the background when Totalis Rankin wasn't watching.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's like a guy that almost made Persia Christian, which is unexpected, but apparently that happened. So yeah, that was one of my more recent surprises.
Yeah, that foundation is so important though. Like I did not go all the way through with Latin in school. I did like 4 or 5 years of it, and was definitely not studying towards the end at all. But going into first doing history at uni, and then now doing the podcast, having something like Latin, if you're doing European history, just having like a little bit of it, like, goes such a long way with making everything just feel less like everyone's an alien. I think.
Alrighty, we have 3 minutes left, and Bree Jensen says,
Oh,
well
God.
done, you all. Love to have you all as part of this
Yay.
Rexy community. So thank you, Bree. Thank you, everyone, for being here and asking questions. They were great.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, guys. They were really good.
It was a fun time.
Yes, thank you for not having me ask all the questions, because they've just been gone more and more into me and playing D&D territory, and that would not have been fun for everyone. So awesome.
Yay.
Oh, we counterspelled that.
No! No! Roberto, you're never gonna live down that D&D session.
Oh no! Oh, I do that all the time. It's okay. I did it 2 days ago. It was for a resurrection spell. So yes, I am a devious
Okay.
DM. Anyways,
Are we done?
yes, we're good to go. Thank you all for being here.
I don't want to get it.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hats
Hey,
off to
guys.
everyone.
Lovely time.
That's
All
when
right.
you want to
See
end
you
that.
I know, it's like, can we go? No.
No, you can. All right, go get to the
Bye,
next
guys.
keynote. All right, have fun,
Awesome.
y'all.
Thanks, everyone,
All
for
right.
joining.
Bye.